What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to a Thursday show, gang. Another short little 5-gamer on deck today. 4 p.m. start, plenty of time to get through this one. 6:40 start time for the slate, main slate on both sites. It's all the baseball today. No afternoon games, no nothing. But a tight little 5-gamer. It's an interesting one. Taking a look at the board. Really interested to see a couple of these offensive spots. There's not what I would call a really deep pitching slate, but there's some interesting options to use anyway. Couple really interesting totals and a couple teams that combine together in really interesting ways. So it's going to be a good one to dig through. Looking forward to talking about it. Hopefully everybody's Thursday is going well out there. Crashing rapidly toward the weekend. I'm sure we'll have a monster slate tomorrow after a couple of 5-gamers in a row. It'll probably be a big 12 to 14 games tomorrow night, but I haven't looked at the schedule. But I imagine it'll be a big Friday, and we'll obviously be here for all of that. Probably starting up more around 3 o'clock tomorrow. Hit the like on your way in the door. Subscribe if you're new here. Check out our pals over at acemind.io. We'll talk more about them later on. Cujo's here. August 1st. Yeah, can you believe it? Another year just flying by. 7 months through 2024 already. Most of the way, 3/5 of the way through the baseball season? More than 2/3 of the way? It's a lot of time flying by. Let me turn the sound off here. Trey's here. Trey was back in the top 1% last night. Finished 100th in the big $3 last night. Love it, buddy. Good job. I rolled 2 lineups last night. One was quite good, fell just a little bit short, and then another one didn't get near the cash line. Had the Cubs in one of them. That's what I did. I ended up using the Rockies as the key value team, and then it was stack one with the Cubs, and then a more expensive pitcher one, I think. I forget what the other one was. But one came through, one did not. Hopefully we had some other winners out there. Kenneth Woodhouse is here. Lone Wolf is here. Matthew Patterson. Dimitri. Tizzleman thinks the slate is funky. Stephen Leibowitz thinks it's gross. Power says it means nothing, but I'm excited to see the Hall of Fame game tonight. Yeah, I forgot about that. There are no slates up for it, right? Maybe like a 1-gamer or whatever. Forgot to check that. Okay, there is a little single gamer on FanDuel. I'm sure DraftKings has something even better. I did talk about preseason football projections. I'll get them for more complete slates where we've got a couple games to work with that I think we should be getting. But does DraftKings actually not have it? Or do I just... Oh, no, there he is. I need to click over to that. Oh, DK's actually got a pretty decent contest. That's not a bad little $50K to first over on DraftKings for the showdown contest for that tonight. I don't know that I'll watch that over baseball or just whatever. I'm not the biggest fan of actually watching preseason football a lot of the time. But I might check it out for a little bit at least. I've talked about this before. I'm just a much bigger... I like baseball a whole hell of a lot better than I like football. And I think just the TV product for football is bad. That's why I love Red Zone during the season, because you don't have to tolerate the TV product. It just jumps around for all the stuff that you actually want to watch. Watching one NFL game at a time is pretty bad TV experience in my mind. Stephen Leibowitz, playing the Hall of Fame game is a degenerate special. Yeah, that's for sure. But it's there. It's fun. You know, might throw a dart at it. You never know. So let's take a look at this 5-game Vegas board here. Real interesting one between the O's and the Guardians to start things off. The biggest total on the board at 9 runs. Both teams taking a big chunk of it. 4.48 on the Orioles side, 4.62 on the Guardian side. Love both teams. Love it as a game stack opportunity. I think both sides are going to be pretty popular, and then it just breaks down to like, what are you stacking those guys with? And where I was talking about how it's interesting how the key teams on this slate stack up. You've essentially got these two teams, the Orioles and the Guardians. You've got the Royals at a pretty beefy total. And then you've got the Braves at a big total. And if you think about how those teams go together with some of the things that we've talked about in the past about like, especially with the Orioles and the Royals, where you almost certainly, if you're building one lineup, especially with those teams, it's very difficult, or at least it demands a sacrifice putting these two high-end teams together, because you can, let's say on FanDuel, go with both of the premium shortstops, but then you're blocking off a util spot, so you can't go with both of Sal Perez and Vinny Pasquantino from the Royals side, let's say. If you're on DraftKings, obviously you're only getting one of those two premium, ultra premium shortstops. So, like, these work together better, these work together better, these work together better. So you're just looking for, like, all right, which of the high-end teams don't necessarily block me at shortstop where I'm still getting all their best players in my stack. So I think it's really interesting just paying attention to how the teams come together. That said, even with that sacrifice, I do still think that these two teams are super interesting to put together, and you're just dealing with, all right, I don't have choose which one you like better between Gunnar and Bobby Witt, and then deal with the fact that you don't have the other guy. So they still go together, they still belong together, but it is very, very interesting how the other teams fit together in better, quote-unquote, heavy quotes on better, but better ways. That pitching matchup in the first game here. Oh, by the way, we've got, let me actually start here. We have weather in 4 of these 5 games, which is fun. So per our pal, Mr. Roth, Baltimore, Cleveland off the top here has scattered showers and storms. He's got his yellow. No real guidance there, but seems like that's not overly threatening. Play in the rain, maybe a couple delays, that kind of a situation. It's Ben Lively on the mound for the Guardians. It's Trevor Rogers making his Orioles debut. He was added to the FanDuel slate. He wasn't on it early in the day. I updated the projections just before. Neither pitcher is super compelling in this spot or in this matchup with those totals, so I'm not as worried about the rain there as long as the game starts. I figure they get their 9 innings in. KC at Detroit, our next game up. KC with that monster 4.71, or monster for this slate, 4.72 implied total. On the other side, 3.88 implied runs for the Tigers. We've got Kader Montero going for Detroit, and we've got pretty effective this year Seth Lugo, but probably overperforming overall on the mound for KC. The rain situation in that one, it's another hard yellow on Ross board. Light rain around. He's basically saying they need to start on time because if they delay, they're going to run into a much bigger wall of rain later on. Probably going to get wet during the game, but he thinks it does play and plays a full 9 as long as they're able to start on time. So definitely something to watch as we go into lock, but seems all right-ish. Miami and Atlanta is another one. 3.61 implied total for the Marlins. The Braves carrying the slate high, basically a 5-run total, depending on rounding up. Definitely an appealing spot for Braves bats. They're going up against Max Meyer in his second start back. And then it's Charlie Morton, good old Charlie on the mound for the Braves. Always playable, more so when he's against a weak opponent like this. So we'll talk about Charlie. This one's got some weather again in the area. It's just the way that Roth puts it. It's a yellow, another yellow, third straight yellow in a row. Third straight yellow in a row. Well said. Third straight yellow. And he just basically calls it your classic Atlanta situation where there's just thunderstorms all around in the area. One might pop over the ballpark, cause a delay, cause a mess, but just kind of deal with it. And then the last weather game is the Chicago game, St. Louis at Chicago, 4.01 implied total for St. Louis, 4.07 on the Chicago side. Storms in the area, another one where you need to be able to start on time is his read. This one he's got yellow/orange, so I think that means it's a little bit more concerning. And it's basically the same read as he had on the Detroit game where it's they need to start on time. If they start on time, they're probably okay unless they get some real bad luck. But if they don't start on time, they're probably going to run into a lot more weather late, so it might not work out. So a lot of weather to watch through the first 4. The matchup there, St. Louis has Sonny Gray on the hill, and Chicago has Shota Imanaga going. So pretty decent pitching matchup in that one, despite the 4+ totals, and those are pretty low 4+ totals. Colorado Rockies drawing a 4.20 against Carson Fulmer, and then the Angels 4.39 against Ryan Feltner. Couple of lower end teams, late night game, the only safe spot weather-wise, couple of bad pitchers. Maybe Fulmer's on the board for consideration as a cheap dart throw. Maybe it's Feltner. Both of them are in a cakewalk of a matchup. Obviously, you get a little bit more of a threat coming from the Angels side of things, but there are some bats we like in the Rocky side. It's probably going to be another one of those ugly four-corner spots where it's like we don't really want anything from this game, but we have to talk about all four pieces from this game. Sonny Gray, top of your pitching board. Having a fantastic season overall. 9,800 seems like a fair price for him on the DraftKings slate. 10,000 on FanDuel, totally fair. Going up against a Cubs team that is, one we've talked about a lot. We just saw them go off yesterday. They do have power in that lineup. They just added Isaac Paredes for some more home run upside. They can draw walks. They can get on base. But Sonny Gray cuts through a lot of that with his strikeout stuff, and he's having one of the best, if not the best season of his career. So definitely worth considering up there. Seth Lugo, very easy matchup on against Detroit at 10-3, the most expensive FanDuel pitcher, 9,400. He's offset a little bit in price from Sonny Gray and Shota Imanaga. Definitely makes him interesting there. Again, I do think he's probably overpitching his talent, his stuff a little bit. He's getting away with a little bit this year, but he's been very good, and it's holding up. And the Tigers are one of the less likely teams to expose that, even with some of their younger hitters kind of catching on. Imanaga, definitely think is a very talented pitcher, 9,700, 9,600, no issues with it at the price. We'll see where the ownership lands. I'll take a peek over at RG's ownership and see who's pulling out to the league, because that becomes an interesting spot if he's not that popular. It's a gettable enough St. Louis squad. Charlie definitely looking good for the money, 8,800 against Miami. Can pull some upside out of that spot. And then the ugly one, I mentioned it just a second ago, Carson Fulmer. Kind of decent numbers against Colorado. Rockies against a righty on the road. That's kind of all we're hoping for here. Not a very good pitcher, but he's a very cheap pitcher on this slate. 67 makes a lot work on your FanDuel slate. 7,300 on DraftKings obviously makes a lot work as an SP2, but you're definitely playing with fire. Max Meyer. Wanted to leave a nice long pause between fire and Meyer. 8,700 on FanDuel, 7,500 on DraftKings. The Braves pulling the highest total on the board, showing some decent power upside against. He is a talented kid, but just the second start back. We'll give it a look, but I don't love where he's priced on FanDuel. Looks more playable on DraftKings, but we probably dance around that one and just kind of take the bad upside out of it. Ben Lively is very difficult to trust at 8,000 against the Orioles. Cater Montero against the Royals, where we want to go to some Royals bats, is not all that appealing. Trevor Rogers needs to find his stuff. He had, somebody in the Discord, I think, mentioned it when that trade happened, that it was a bad acquisition for the Orioles. And I was saying it might be an underappreciated one, because he does have talent. He was good a couple years ago, and then he's just been devastated by injuries over the past couple years. He's barely pitched. So if he could find it again, there's upside, but I doubt that he finds it tonight against the Guardians. It just doesn't seem like a very good spot. And then Ryan Feltner is pretty rough against the Angels, but he is, again, very cheap. I don't know what you're talking about, Michael Knack, but let people fight whoever they want. What does it matter? What's up, Mamba? Good luck to you too, buddy. It's about to rain in Michigan, and Michael Tyler's about 45 minutes from Detroit, so that's not great news for wanting to start the game on time. Hopefully that just blows through, and then there's a window there. I don't have the exact radar in front of me. We could pull it up if we really want to get into it, but as usual, I kind of like leaving the weather to the weathermen and just riding their coattails on that. A lot of lineups are in. We've got them up on the site already. See if we got any news or anything else coming through real quick. Hit the like one more time now that we got a few more people in here. We did get the cards lineup. I just grab that real quick off the top so we don't do it. I'll have to slow down later since we're already slowed down now. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe. If you're not in our Discord, make sure you're in there. Follow the @rotoscouts Twitter handle. Helps us out when you like and retweet all that stuff. I think. I don't know. Doesn't seem to really move the needle, to be quite honest, in terms of how many views those tweets get. I sent it out at, I was up, so I knocked everything out this morning and posted it to the site at like 5:30 in the morning. And so I sent the tweet super early today with all the links and everything. And I was like, maybe it'll get like a couple hundred more views, just given more time. No, just about the same. Wilson Contreras, Coach Schmidt, Arenado, Tommy Pham. Donovan goes there. Pham goes there. Lars Nootbaar, Pedro Pajes, and Michael Ciani. All right. Not that we're on that game, but figured I'd grab it while I was there. So the first one up, again, I think this is just, we're primarily focused on bats here. Trevor Rogers, 21 starts, 105 and a third. He's got a 4.53 ERA, a 4.58 xFIP, an 18% strikeout rate, nearly a 10% walk rate. He's not finding swinging strikes. He's not really establishing a strong CSW. He's putting way too many guys on base with a 1.53 whip. He's giving up a lot of premium contact. 8.9% barrels, 43.5% hard hits, and 90-plus miles an hour of exit velo. We're way over the line there. The launch angle's not bad, but the mistakes are very well struck. So probably getting a little bit lucky to be at 2.54. Probably a little bit of help from his former home park there. So we'll see what happens with that home run rate, but definitely feeds the upside to the Guardians here to me. 7,100 across sites doesn't really seem that appealing. I do think, going forward, like I was saying, there is a little bit of reason to believe new organization, new pitching philosophy. Maybe he reclaims his old form. The year I was referring to was just 2021. It's not like it was, forever ago. He made 25 starts that year, had a 28.5% strikeout rate, a 2.64 ERA, and a 3.54 xFIP. It's a pretty damn good season. 2022, he made 23 starts, kind of fell apart. 5.47 ERA, but a 4.11 xFIP. The strikeouts kind of evaporated, 22.2% strikeouts that year, and then he was out for most of last year. So there is talent here. It just needs to be recaptured in a way. So I do think, some I'm supposed to be up here. I do think some tweaks from a new organization, new coaching staff and everything. Maybe we get a little bit of it back. Again, I don't think that this is the day you want to go and try and find out against this Guardians team that is pretty low strikeout in general, has a lot of good bats, has a fair amount of right-handed power in it. Really not looking to rush off and roster Trevor Rogers here. He is cheap. It's a dart throw, but that's all it is. Ben Lively, kind of the same thing, and he's not even really cheap. $8,000, you're paying $900 more on either site for him than you are for Trevor Rogers. He's got a 21.3% strikeout rate, a 3.44 ERA with a 4.29 xFIP. The numbers are perfectly fine, but they're not exceptional anyway. He's very much on league average for most of these numbers. And then he's given up a pretty aggressive amount of premium contact. He's over the line in both the hard hit and the exit velo categories as well. Bigger launch angle. And a 3.97% home run rate that, again, one home run additional and you're over the 4% line already probably. And probably a little bit lucky to not have a few more on top of that number. Stuff Plus does not like the arsenal at all. The same thing's true for Trevor Rogers, but to a lesser degree. So I think both pitchers are just targets for bats, and we're just kind of stacking both teams up. Again, I think these teams work pretty interestingly together as a game stack. And on a 5-game slate, I got no issues with going to a game stack. It's just that these two teams, I'm sure, will be two of the most popular teams on the board today. Let's take a look. I'll pull up RG and take a peek at what their popularity looks like. I tell you what, FanDuel-wise, just looking at the two... there we go. That makes more sense. On the Guardian side... You've got 3 guys that are pretty healthily owned, and they're the 3 obvious guys. But you've got several very interesting bats that are not owned at all. Mid-single digits. So really, no problems putting together a 5-man that differentiates a little bit. If you're just building exclusively Guardians 3-mans, then the 3 most obvious guys should not be your 3 most popular guys. Or they can be, but make sure that you're offsetting with different things. Or just extend out to the 5-man for a very, very good-looking stack, and you'll be offset already. On the Orioles side, there's 4 guys creeping up into the double digits, and 3 of them are in the 20-ish% range on FanDuel. So, again, these are going to be 2 very popular teams, but it's the same situation. Down lineup, there are some very interesting bats, one of which is extremely, extremely cheap with a lot of talent and low single digits ownership. Makes a lot of things work in a variety of stacks. So really intrigued by that. That's on FanDuel. I'm sure that the same is true on DraftKings. So again, we're not really breaking any new ground here. They're actually a little bit lower owned overall on DraftKings. You've only got one guy across the two teams cracking into the 20%. Everybody else, 6 guys between 10 and 18% below that. So the overall percentages were definitely higher on the FanDuel slate, but for the nature of DraftKings, it's pretty much the same, where there are popular guys and they're the obvious guys as you go down the lineup that thins out, and there's a lot of spots that you can work with. And again, a lot of quality in those spots for both of these teams. These are two high-end lineups. On the pitching front on DK, I did want to check that out. All right, it's kind of well distributed, honestly. I had to move the fan off the side of the computer there. The 3 high-end pitchers, or high end for this slate, are your 3 most popular guys. But then there's a decent distribution of ownership across the mid-range, the Ben Lively's of the world, the low end, the Carson Fulmers and Ryan Feltners of the world. Trevor Rogers not at all popular, but again, not a great spot. But maybe he picks up, like by comparison to Ben Lively, they're both in the single digits, but Ben Lively is 3 times as popular and not in any kind of better spot and not necessarily more talented than Trevor Rogers. So if you're deciding for, a handful of value spots and a handful of lineups across a big portfolio, you can mix in some shares of Rogers, but again, not high end, not a target. But it's interesting, there's a nice healthy spread across both Feltner and Fulmer. They come down pretty evenly. I'm surprised. I thought there would have been a little bit more of a distinct choice there. And there might be when it goes from projection to reality. So looking at the bats in this one, again, some of the obvious guys are going to be extremely popular, but lots of spots to dip and dive around. 10.11 in the home run model for Colton Cowser off the top. You can see 4 guys at the top of the Orioles lineup shining through for some extreme power upside. So really like that. That's bouncing off of those contact numbers and the home run upside that Ben Lively's given up so far. And just the power that exists in these bats. Colton Cowser, 14.8% barrels, 48.6% hard hits. He's knocked 16 home runs on the year and 347 plate appearances, a 212 ISO, 121 WRC+. Now a killer spot leading off for this team. Dynamite option for just 4,000, 3,000. Love the spot with Cowser. Adley Rutschman, 56-32, 17 home runs, one of your premium catchers. You have to pay to get him. There's definitely an Adley tax where you have to play the catcher position at 56. At 32 on FanDuel, there's really not. That's honestly, if he was just a first baseman, that wouldn't be a high enough price for his production. 115 WRC+, 17 home runs, a solid triple slash. I really like Adley. I would think 34, 35 maybe, a little bit closer. It's just the idea, I think, that you don't have to play the catcher position on FanDuel. Gunnar at 63-43. Again, if you're just looking at what teams you can stack the Orioles with, it makes it problematic to get to him and Bobby Witt together. On FanDuel, you can do it, but you're occupying both util spots, so you're not getting 2 of the first base eligible guys like Sal and Vinny, and you're also paying an extreme $4,500 and $4,300 for those 2 players, so it blocks off a lot of other capabilities down lineup and with your pitching, but you can get to them both. On DraftKings, you're picking between the 2, and again, I do still think that the Orioles and Royals stacks are worth exploring, and maybe, honestly, people go away from a little bit more than they should, that specific combo, just because of the fact that you have to leave one of the premium players from both teams out, from either team out, rather. So Gunner's fantastic, 12.4% barrels, 55.7% hard hits, 28 home runs, 14 stolen bases. One of the top shortstops in baseball, basically battling Bobby Witt for that title at this point, I think is fair to say. Anthony Santander, 31 home runs, 286 ISO. We're basically at the totals he's put up over the past couple of seasons. 16.46, number 2 on the team behind Gunner, but a monster number in the home run model. I believe I made him the home run pick from the team, and I went with Colton Cowser as the home run pick of the day. It was done at 5:30 this morning, so if I did it the other way around, forgive me. But 2 of the Orioles are key home run picks today. Ryan O'Hearn, Very solid left-handed bat for just 3,100. Fits a first or in the outfield on FanDuel. First base only on DraftKings at 4,300. A little bit more difficult to play over there because there are some primo first basemen. You've got a second first baseman in this lineup with Ryan Mountcastle. They're putting up very, very similar numbers this year. O'Hearn's getting on base a little bit more, creating runs a little bit more, but they have matching 173 ISOs. Excuse me. I was looking down a line. It's 183 for O'Hearn, 173 for Mountcastle, and then another 173 for Cedric Mullins. 12 home runs for O'Hearn, 13 for Mountcastle, and we'll throw Mullins into that. He's got 11 homers and 19 stolen bases. Both O'Hearn and Mountcastle are creating runs above average, 126 WRC plus for O'Hearn, 114 for Mountcastle, just a 93 for Ced Mullins. But you do get the stolen base upside out of him. He's just not getting on base all that frequently this year. He's not hitting for average, not getting on base. It's hampering his run creation ability. But for DFS purposes, where we're looking for the counting stats, we're looking for the home runs, we're looking for the stolen bases, he's definitely playable, and he will be one of the lower owned Orioles, and he's very, very cheap at 36.28 for a guy who's been a 30-30 player in the past. There's a lot of appeal there. Ramon Urias, 2,500, 2,400. If you need to get super cheap, you can do worse. 5 home runs in 192 plate appearances this year. He makes okay contact, not ultra premium contact, but 2 years ago it was very good. That was the year he hit a bunch of home runs, 16 home runs in 445 plate appearances as a low-owned infielder that nobody rostered at very low prices at the bottom of what was then a much worse Orioles lineup. He's always been frisky, so definitely if you need to get cheap at these positions, I think you can fit him in, even though you're sacrificing third base. He's got the upside to take you there on the right day. And then a way, as far as RG's projections anyway are concerned, under-owned, second base eligible, $3,000 Jackson Holiday on DraftKings, $2,300 shortstop and second. You're just putting him at second on FanDuel. That is an absolute asset at the bottom of this lineup. I know he was terrible over his first 30, 40, whatever plate appearances the first time we had him, and then he got sent back down. These things happen with big-time prospects. Sometimes it's nerves, sometimes it's, there is a lack of talent and they go bust, but Jackson Holiday has a long, long leash, way longer than 41 plate appearances, and the dude hit a grand slam just last night, and you can see in the limited batted ball events that he's managed in those 41 plate appearances while striking out 46.3% of the time, he's actually crushed the ball. 15% barrels and 45% hard hits. Again, that amounts to, like three barrels in a handful of batted ball events. But still, it's there, and it's representative of how he hits the ball. That is who he is. This is one of the absolute top prospects in baseball. So, love the option at the bottom of the lineup in the infield. You can bet he'll be in my lineup today at second base on FanDuel at 2,300. Take him as a wraparound, work it back up to Cowser and that whole primo core up at the top. Love how it makes things work cost-wise, ownership-wise. I think he'll be more popular than where RG's actually got him projected, but he's in the low single digits on their projections, so maybe we climb to 10-ish%, and that is still entirely workable. On the Guardians side, Stephen Kwan, one of the top table setters in baseball and hitting for a little bit of power this year. Not really. I mean, he has technically more than doubled his barrel rate. It went from 1.1 last year, 1.4 the year before, to 2.3% this year. 23% hard hits, up from 18% last year, but we're still not exactly tattooing the ball. But he has turned that into 11 home runs, just a 155 ISO. That's more who Stephen Kwan is. 385 on base is spectacular, though. I believe he's still leading the league in average. Don't quote me on that. 150 WRC plus, literally one of the best table setters in baseball. Easy click at the top of the Guardians lineup on either site. He's pricey, but it's appropriate, and he gives a little bit more for DFS than what you're getting out of like Luis Arraez this year. Arraez is a lot cheaper and has second base eligibility, but Kwan's giving you the better season this year between those two. Lane Thomas now on the Guardians. Don't sleep on him, especially against a lefty. A lot of upside there. 8 home runs on the season, 28 steals, a 330 on base, 107 WRC plus. This guy was made to play for this Guardians lineup, honestly. He fits right in with what this team does. So, love the option. Like having Lane Thomas on the Guardians now, $5,000 on DraftKings, $35 on FanDuel. Not cheap, but definitely worth playing in this spot if you're considering the Guardians, and honestly, one of the reasons to consider Guardians. Jose Ramirez is just a star, 6,000 and 4,200, totally worth paying for. 27 home runs, 20 stolen bases, a 256 ISO, 137 WRC plus. There was a brief moment in time there over like his first 150 plate appearances where it was like, ooh, he needs to get his motor going, and that obviously happened. Josh Naylor, another one of those guys on DK, especially, who is projected to be pretty low owned via RotoGrinders ownership projections. FanDuel as well. He was one of the lower owned guys. 3,700, 5,200. He's down to 241, 320, 477, but still carrying 23 home runs at 236 ISO, a 121 WRC plus, 9.8% barrels, 44.1% hard hits. Doesn't really strike out. 17.4% strikeout rate. And 13.7 last year from a guy who hits the ball as hard as he does and hits as many home runs as he does. If people don't want Josh Naylor, I'm happy to have him. David Fry, 4,500. Catcher only on DK. 3 positions on FanDuel. Nice flexibility there. Love moving him around. Cheap right-handed bat with a little bit of power upside. Slashing 286, 391, 449, a 139 WRC plus. He hit 8 quick home runs out of the gate and then has kind of cooled off, tapered off a little bit in terms of the power output, but everything else is kind of carried through. He's been a very effective bat for them. Jackenzie Noel, 3,300 at first base in the outfield on DK, 27 same positioning on FanDuel. Another very strong right-handed power bat. 6 home runs in 69 plate appearances, a 333 ISO, 17.1% barrels, and 46.3% hard hits in his tiny sample of batted ball events. Kid's got power in the bat. 254, 304, 587. I don't know how we hold up on the front side of that slash line. You'd like to think the on base, even better than hovering around there, goes up a little bit from 304, but at least you want it to hover in that territory. We'll see what happens with the average. Known more to be a power hitter and a high strikeout guy, 33.3% strikeouts in this in with the good, and just 4.3% walks. So not a real 3 true outcomes guy right now. Needs to find his footing as far as that goes, but definitely if he connects, there's a lot of power there going up against a gettable enough lefty. Tyler Freeman, a mix and match outfielder, 7 home runs, 10 stolen bases, the ability to fill some counting stats. Supposed to be a very good contact hitter, but what we're getting this year, over 338 plate appearances now, is 224, 319, 352. So that part really hasn't come through, but he's cheap, he's playable. Bo Naylor not having a great season, 7 home runs and 257 chances, a really low-end triple slash, 138 ISO and a 73 WRC plus. And then Brian Rocio, basically here to play shortstop, play defense, and annoy Jose Ramirez by banging on his helmet. Did you guys see that clip that was going around the other day? Ramirez came back to the dugout. Oh, sorry, I forgot to do a little ranking thing there. Ramirez came back to the dugout after hitting a home run, and he was walking to the end of it, and Rocio was just behind him banging on his helmet. And Ramirez turned and whipped off his helmet and went like he was going to hit him with it. I hope they were joking. It looked fairly serious. I don't know. Not sure if they're actually friends or what, but yeah, that's all Brian Rocio's really here to do. Play defense, annoy Jose Ramirez. It'd be fun if they had a odd couple type relationship where he just pisses them off all the time. This is very much Orioles bats, then Guardians bats. I might have had it the other way around on the site, though. However it was on the site. Let's see. Yeah, Orioles bats, then Guardians bats. The way it ranked out was KC, Baltimore, Atlanta, Cleveland among your top 4. And again, those are the 4 teams that and everybody, honestly, is going to be trying to mix and match their way through. And they're all very, very close. I would have no issues ranking Baltimore at the top and KC 4th and Cleveland 2nd. So you can mix that up any way you want. All 4 of those teams are super high end today. So I'm going to say Orioles, then Guardians. And really neither pitcher. If you had to do it, I would probably take the Trevor Rogers discount if I had to do it. Especially given all the power that's showing for the Orioles. Seems like a little bit more blow-up potential for Ben Lively. And he's more expensive. But really, it's neither pitcher. DB. What's going on, DB? DB's picking fights? What's going on? Yeah, all this speculative and non-Islam shit. I don't know what you're talking about. That's probably not what we want to be talking about in a online chat. I don't know what's going on here. Anyway. Yeah, right, Tiz? Tiz saw it. It really looked like Ramirez wanted to smack him with that helmet. J. Ram and Elaine Thomas mini stack. Maybe throw Bo Naylor in for savings and catcher for Jake. That's not bad. Naylor is a little bit offset if you think about, like, the way that stack runs, but that barely matters. I like them a little bit more extended than that, but it depends on how many lineups you're building, obviously. And again, I like the game stack in that one. It will be popular, but given at least some of the lower end popularity guys that you kind of need to use to put those two teams together anyway, I think it gets offset. Not a big deal. Seth Lugo on the hill for the Royals, 9,400 on DraftKings, 10-3 on FanDuel. Again, pitching very well this season. 2.66 ERA is sparkling up top, but you can see where the holes are. A very apparent hole right there, 3.75 xFIP underneath that, a full run and a quarter higher. It's not a bad number as an xFIP. Like, if that was his ERA, we'd still be saying, well, Seth Lugo probably pretty playable here against the Tigers. It just means he's probably not this good. Or he's getting away with a little bit here. You can also see it in Stuff Plus, a little bit below average. Not bad, but a little bit below average. 40+% hard hits is another little bit of an indicator. He's managed just 2.11% home runs, 89.2 miles an hour of exit velo. Could be a little bit lower, but not bad. We're usually, again, looking for 90 when we're looking at bad. So he's got a little bit of room between that and 90. The launch angle's not egregious. The barrels aren't terrible that he's allowed. A little bit of happenstance, of course, in there. A lot of that also depends on the hitter. But he's making it work in terms of the power. He's making it work in terms of the limited arsenal, but keeping guys off base. He doesn't walk anybody, 5.6% walks. League average is kind of a strikeout rate at 21.8% over his 142 in the third in 22 starts, and giving you strong depth. 6 1/3 last time, complete game, 1 run, 3 hitter start before that. That one was against the Cubs. The other one was against the White Sox. Against the Cubs in the 6 1/3, he gave up 6 earned runs, struck out just two walks. In the 9 innings against the White Sox, he only struck out 6 over 9 innings. So that's actually not great strikeout output. 6 of 30 hitters, you're right on 1 in 5, so he's right around his 20. He's below his 21.8, but he's not far off the mark. 6 Ks against 25 hitters against Boston at Fenway, but gave up 5 earned runs, gave up a homer in that one. He has given up a home run in 3 of his last 4 starts. And he's given up 5+ earned runs in 2 of his last 3 starts. Maybe some, back end of the season, a little bit of the magic is starting to wear off, a little bit of the turning back into a pumpkin kind of effect here. But overall, again, I think this is a spot he can get through. I think he's good enough to get here. And he was, before, he's been a solid mid-range type of a pitcher when he's made starts in the past. He's been a good reliever in the past. So we're not talking about an untalented pitcher. It's just he has, again, overperformed over these 142 1/3. But capable of shutting down this Tigers team. There's a 24.6% strikeout rate to work with to find a little bit of strikeout upside as well. So we've got a lot of believability in Seth Lugo having at least one more good day, and he projects out that way. Kader Montero at 5,500, 7,300. Against the Royals, if you want to go there, you've certainly got some huevos if you do. He's given up at least 5 earned runs. Actually, he's given up exactly 5 earned runs in 5 innings, 5 1/3, and 5 innings against Minnesota, Toronto, and the Dodgers in his last 3 starts. Problematic outings in each of those. 3 home runs allowed to Minnesota, 2 home runs allowed to Toronto, and 1 home run allowed to the Dodgers. Those are going backward in time, so technically he's gotten worse over that stretch. In the 6 starts that he's made this season, he has only 1 start where he didn't give up a home run. That was a 6 1/3 inning start against Cleveland of all teams. He struck out 4, he walked 1, he gave up just 3 hits and no earned runs. This is the only start where he gave up fewer than 2 runs. He only gave up 2 once, and in every other start he's given up at least 4, including 4 of those 5 starts. He gave up exactly 5 earned runs. Not a good pitcher, or at least not right now. You can see the across 6 starts and 36 2/3, the monster home run rate that I was just referring to, 6.29% home run rate, feeding the upside for Bobby Witt, for Sal Perez. Vinny Pasquantino coming in just under the magic number for home run upside. Couldn't swing him at the deadline. Our deadline in the Dynasty League was actually last night, not Sunday. So I was trying like crazy to, I told you, I've acquired Vinny over the weekend, but I don't actually need him this year. He was just kind of to replace Mountcastle going forward as my first baseman of the future, or backup first baseman. But he's got a lot of quality. I was trying to flip him for another high-end pitcher, but I couldn't pull it off. Disappointed. I really wanted to pick somebody up, but hopefully I'll be able to find one. or we'll just keep working with the streaming and the waivers. That's worked out really well all season. So anyway, I don't think you're playing Keter Montero. He's got an okayish 19.5% strikeout rate. The walks aren't terrible. The xFIP is definitely 2 runs better than the ERA. But the runners allowed 1.45 whip is pretty ugly. 10.3% swinging strikes is not bad, but it just hasn't worked out. Do you really want to go try and find out against a Royals lineup that has a 17.5% strikeout rate, makes a ton of contact, gets on base, creates runs, and hits for power? I don't think it's a good spot, not even at 5,500, 7,300. It just doesn't seem like a play. Royals bats, on the other hand, big-time play on this slate. Michael Garcia, welcome back to the leadoff spot. Like I said a few days ago, if they were just rotating guys like Michael Massey and his 274 on base, I do like Michael Massey, but more as a power bat from the left side. Guys like Adam Frazier and his sub 300 on base, like if that's the case, just leave Michael Garcia there then. He's got a 287 on base. He's stolen 25 bags. He was more effective earlier in the season when he was up in the leadoff spot. Just leave him there. At this point, we don't have a good option. We don't have anybody who's getting on base at a reasonable enough clip. So just go with it. I think he's totally playable for our purposes, especially with second base eligibility on DK at 4,300. Same thing on FanDuel, 2,900. Seems like a reasonable option. He's not at all reliable, but there is a little bit of power. He is low strikeout, low walk, so he puts balls in play, and he's got the counting stat appeal. Just hasn't hit a home run in a while. 109 ISO at this point. Needs to get the power back. 41.7% hard hits, not really reflective of that, but you can see that he hasn't really barreled many balls. He hasn't really squared them up properly. So a lot of work to do, but a lot of talent in that player. Bobby Witt, superstar, 65-45, totally worth it. He scored 91 runs, geez. 349, 396, 596, creating runs 70% better than average. 19 homers, 24 steals. Absolute stud at the position. Just, you're deciding on DK, which of the star shortstops do you want? Vinny, still cheap, 4,800 on DraftKings, 31 on FanDuel. Hit his 12th home run last night, 166 ISO, 103 WRC+. Numbers continue to gradually tick up. We're basing our enthusiasm for him, as usual, on the low 12.8% strikeouts against a 45% hard hit rate. The barrels are creeping up a little bit. He is a tremendous, tremendous hitter who puts the ball in play like crazy and hits it very, very hard. Even with what some could say is not the best slash line, but 262, 320, 429. There's nothing wrong with that. Not the highest ISO at 166, despite all of the premium contact. Still drives in a ton of runs, 72 RBIs on the season. If we're just talking about, back of the baseball card type stats, part of that based on the fact that Bobby Witt is on base in front of him all the time with his 396 on base percentage. Imagine what that number would be if they had a competent leadoff hitter all year. Sal Pettis, 49, 3,000, catcher and first base eligible on both sites. Only matters on one of them. 11.99 in the home run model. He's got 19 on the season, 189 ISO. I love Sal's upside for a homer tonight. Definitely like getting Sal into my Royal stacks. Hunter Renfroe pulled his season together a little bit. 11 homers, 181 ISO, 104 WRC+. Slash line still sucks, but he's only got a 16.7% strikeout rate. So another guy who puts bat on ball with frequency, and if the quality of those batted ball events is improving for a guy who's hit a bunch of home runs over the past few seasons, I'm definitely intrigued for a very cheap price. Michael Massey, I mentioned it before, but 4,200, 2,800. I like the lefty power at second base. Definitely a good left-handed option to consider throwing at Keter Montero, and a completely reasonable alternative to Michael Garcia at the top, or you just put Garcia at third and you play Massey at second. Nothing wrong with attacking it that way. Freddie Fermin, again, I will go back to saying that he's the guy who they should probably just drop into that leadoff spot. Continues to get on base, 354 on base percentage, 223 plate appearances. Pretty good hitter. 304, 354, 441. I greatly prefer Sal in my catcher spot, but you could make an argument if you're skipping Vinny for some reason, put Sal at first and Freddie at catcher. You're very much differentiating a Royal stack that way. I'll give it that. Garrett Hampson and Kyle Isbell at the bottom, just mix and match quality players. Hampson's been all right. 80 WRC plus isn't great. 79 WRC plus for Isbell, but Hampson's giving you a little bit more in the slash line. He's stolen 6 bases. Isbell's hit 7 home runs and stolen 7 bases, but again, there's not a lot of regularity, not a lot of quality there. They will be cheap. They will help offset ownership for some of the higher-end guys, but you could do better, and I think the bottom of the lineup for the Orioles is a little bit better than the bottom of the lineup for the Royals. If you're choosing to target Seth Lugo, which isn't completely out of the question, given the short slate, given the cheap prices for the Tigers,
and the nature of Lugo's performance. Even if you believe fully the 2.66 ERA, every now and then he can get got even with a good ERA like that. And low strikeout guy, just doesn't give up a lot of opportunities via the walk. And you're dealing with, again, a very bad Tigers team. You're starting probably with Colt Keith as your top priority bat. 255, 312, 402, a 101 WRC plus. I'm remembering that Riley Green is not in this lineup, so that further diminishes the appeal of the Tigers. But Colt Keith probably your highest priority at second base, 3628 across sites. Cost wise, second base is a good spot to have a player like that. Does have a lot of power. Should continue to improve on the numbers that he's put up so far this season based on the prospect pedigree. Took him a while to get going, like most of the rookies this year, but has a ton of ceiling. Matt Vierling having a good year, fair price, $2,700 on FanDuel, $39 on DraftKings, 13 home runs, a 188 ISO, 103 WRC plus over 381 chances. Playable part from the top. Wensil Perez, 37-29, 8 home runs, 9 steals, capable of filling some counting stats. 298 on base, could be better, 94 WRC plus, could definitely be better. And he doesn't exactly hit the ball hard. Despite a little bit of output for home runs, that's not a great home run total in 344 plate appearances at this point, and we're not really crushing the ball, so kind of miscast as a 3-hitter, but it's just kind of the best that this team can offer it as well. Justin Henry Malloy has a decent amount of power, 11.3% barrels in his 150 plate appearances. He's blasted 7 home runs, a 198 ISO, carrying the best ISO among the semi-regulars on this team right now. 103 WRC plus is also somewhat playable. He's very, very cheap. Bly Madras at first, 2,300, 2,400, only made 28 plate appearances so far. Doing pretty well out of the gate, 125 WRC plus and a good slash line, making pretty good contact. So if you're stacking Tigers, I think you want to get the second lefty in your lineup. I'm okay with using him at first. I'd rather probably just drop him into the outfield on FanDuel. He's very cheap. There is a little bit of potential there. Dylan Dingler, going to be a bright, shining star. 2,400, 2,300 at catcher. He's made 4 plate appearances. We'll see what we get out of him. The Shining Star thing is a movie reference for those who know. I don't actually think that the player is going to be that. I don't know anything about him, I'll be honest. He's 25 years old. He is a, per Graphs, 12th ranked organizationally for Detroit. A 40-ish grade prospect. Doesn't look like any kind of a big prospect. He did hit 17 home runs in 301 AAA plate appearances so far this year. 308, 379, 559. So he's kind of rolling at AAA. 251 ISO. He's 25. So he's a little bit advanced, but not necessarily for a catcher. I guess you could work with that if you get desperate and you want to just roster a really cheap catcher from your Tigers stack. We can work with those minor league numbers from Dylan Dingler. Purple Neon. Gio Urshela, Zach McKinstry, and Ryan Creedler just kind of mix and match pieces at the absolute best. 68, 48, and 24 WRC pluses over 287, 202, and 46 plate appearances. There's not a single player in that trio that I would want. It really runs 1 through 6 from this Tiger squad, and you're really dealing with a low-end organization, again, against a talented pitcher. It's weird to say both that Seth Lugo is talented and that he's overperforming his talent, but I do think that that's the case. As weird as it sounds. Royals bats way up top, followed by Seth Lugo, and then maybe a few mix and match Tiger stacks. If you roster a big position of Seth Lugo, you might want to consider a small Tigers hedge. They're very cheap, so you can get to some primo stuff along with that, and you're at least blocking off the possibility of a Lugo blow-up, which is on the table. Keter Montero, from me, is just a pretty hard no. DB got the movie reference. Greg got it as well. Well picked up, gentlemen. Well picked up. Yeah, Michael, the Tigers lineup is, I don't think it's basically trash. I think it's almost entirely trash. It's just a matter of, short slate differentiation. And if you're going to do that, I'd rather do that probably against Lugo than, say, against Sonny Gray, Shode Managa. You could make the argument that doing that against Charlie with the Marlins is also very, very viable. We'll get to that one in a minute. But I don't know. There's a little bit of interest in that Tiger stack, but it's again, it's only the DFS part of it. It's only just like that path into the slate being very differentiated. That is not how I built my current placeholder lineup, not by any means. So speaking of Charlie, he's going up against a super gettable Marlins lineup that doesn't have most of their best players anymore. It looks on paper like a very good Charlie Morton spot. 106 innings over 19 starts this year, giving us a 4.16 ERA, a 4.07 xFIP. Manageable numbers, and those are numbers that are like, all right, when he's facing the Marlins, you expect a little bit better than a 4-run kind of a game. So hopefully he holds them down in terms of runs, but I think the expectation should be that he gives up a couple. You're just chasing some strikeout upside, 23.2% rate for him. He's given up a little bit of a walk rate this year at 9%, but still inducing a good 11.4% swinging strike rate. And he's going up against a team with a 23.3% strikeout rate for this confirmed version of the lineup. Last time out, just lasted 2 2/3 at Citi Field against the Mets. 5 earned runs, 7 runs total on 6 hits, struck out just 2, gave up 3 home runs in a total meltdown. Faced St. Louis the game before that, faced 23 hitters, gave up 6 hits, but 1 unearned run, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. Medium quality start, let's say. Not ideal for 8,800, but probably around where these median projections are. 6 1/3 gave up 4 earned against Arizona. 5 1/3 gave up 3 earned, 4 runs against the Giants. 5 Ks in each of those games. Had a good one against Pittsburgh going back to June 28th. 6 1/3 struck out 7, no earned on 3 hits. That's a comparable opponent. They're better than the Marlins are. Not that we're specifically game log hunting like that. I just like seeing the recent depth, the recent form a little bit, and it's been decidedly average all season for Charlie. Again, the expectation in most of these games, most of the output this year has been for a couple few runs, a couple few strikeouts. On your upside days, you're getting 7 or 8. That's what we're hunting for today, and it's an ideal opponent to do it against. He's going to be popular. He slots right in alongside the... Actually, on DraftKings... Oh, no, excuse me. This is FanDuel. FanDuel is actually the top of the board. It's only a few points separation between him and a couple of the other obvious guys. But that price offset is doing him a lot of favors at the top of the board, I think, on FanDuel. Again, ownership projections without giving away the ownership numbers or via RG's ownership. Charlie is... Come on. Yeah, he's your top-owned pitcher over there as well. Again, it's the price offset from Lugo and Sonny Gray that's really doing it. So, again, it does make the argument for, considering a little bit of Lugo, but you're on DK especially, you're talking about 2-3 points of separation between him, a little bit more than that between them and Sonny Gray, but not much. Max Meyer, for what it's worth on his side of things, in his return start, gave up 3 earned runs over 4 innings, faced 16 hitters, struck out 3, walked 2, gave up a homer. At the beginning of the season, he made 3 starts, April 1st, 7th, and 13th. The starts on the 7th and the 13th, he went 6 in both of those, faced the Cards and the Braves. 1 earned run in each of them, 7 strikeouts in the game against the Braves. That's probably your absolute ceiling here. I don't think we're getting more than like 5 innings. Doesn't really project out for a monster score, but on this board, especially on DK for just 75 against the high strikeout Braves lineup, if I can get that 5th inning, it's kind of in play. 87 on FanDuel feels a little bit rough when you're just chasing strikeout upside and you're kind of thin for the win bonus as well. Probably not getting you the quality start bonus already. That win bonus matters on DraftKings, but a little bit less probably than the combined lack of bonuses on FanDuel does for the much higher price. So I think minor play maybe on DraftKings should probably be cheaper for what the innings cap is going to look like. If you're considering Marlins bats, it's probably not the best idea. But again, I do think as much as Lugo's a little bit targetable, maybe Charlie's a little bit targetable, given the 4 or 5 runs that have happened a few times. He had one big blow up That was an 8-run game. Outside of that, he hasn't given up more than 5 earned, but he's given up 5 earned twice. He's given up, he gave up a 6 earned run also back at against this Marlins team back on April 14th. And if you think that actually matters for tonight, you're completely out of your mind. But there is a little bit of reason to maybe consider among the more highly projected and highly owned pitchers that Charlie's a little bit targetable. If you're building 150 lineups, I think it probably makes sense to grab like a little squad of Marlins and throw them over in the corner and hope that those 5 lineups, if Charlie blows up and you've got a bigger share of Charlie, hope that you got the right guys and they came through for you to hedge that position off. Xavier Edwards from the top of the lineup, great 114 plate appearances so far, 379, 451, 484, 164 WRC plus. Holding down the leadoff spot now. Interesting enough. Definitely an interesting way to get things started. I don't love it at shortstop on DraftKings, but he's only 4,000, so you at least get a monster discount from those 6,000 and change superstar shortstops. Second base on FanDuel seems a lot more viable, but he's been killer for them so far. Jake Berger making very good contact, 11.4% barrels, 45.8% hard hits. Both marks down from last year, as is his overall performance at 235, 282, 416, just a 180 ISO and 93 WRC plus. You're just home run hunting with Jake. He's only got a 5.97, but that does lead the Marlins in the home run model today. He's got 15 on the year in an off season. If you're rostering Marlins, you're not skipping Jake Berger. But that's the nature of the investment on this team. You're buying a guy who's just really underperforming or maybe correctly performing, and we just had an outlier year last year. We'll see what happens going forward. But he's at least cheap first base, third base. I don't really have a problem playing him in either of those spots. Jesus Sanchez is the guy I'm actually interested from this team, as always. 12 home runs, 7 stolen bases, a 168 ISO, 93 WRC plus. Still striking out too much at 24.7%, but minor incremental improvement from last year. He just lost nearly 5 points of walk rate from last year, but he mashes the ball when he connects with it. 12.4% barrels and 52.1% hard hits. Kid's a hitter there, or is at least a slugger. He might not be a hitter, but he's at least a slugger. And if I'm going to this team, he's not consistent at all with the strikeouts, the low on base, and the substandard WRC plus. But I'm definitely a buyer if I'm going to Marlins. And for me, he's the key reason to consider going to Marlins outside of just wanting to target Charlie a little bit as an angle into the slate. Again, this is not like, when I say wanting to, it's not like I want to, I think it's a good idea. It's saying that if you take that angle, that would be your angle. Jonah Bride, Kyle Stowers, and I don't know if this is, did he play yesterday? I don't know if this is his debut, but they just acquired Kyle Stowers from the Orioles in the Jake Rogers trade. 2,900, 2,300 across sites. He's cheap, lefty bat with a little bit of pop in it. You can see, I went back 2 years ago. How many plate appearances was that one? Yeah, 3 home runs, 98 plate appearances, and was okay slash-wise. Created runs above average. It's a very small sample. We don't have much to work with, but made very good contact in that very small sample. Obviously, this is a much smaller sample, but he's managed to make good contact. He's hit a home run this year, or 175 ISO. Kyle Stowers is definitely in the plans as well. You just grab the lefty bat and with a little bit of power upside if you're going to Marlins. But again, it's a big if you're going to Marlins. Jonah Bride in the middle of the lineup, 2,400 on either site. 1 home run for him in 46 plate appearances. It's been a minute since I've had to talk about Jonah Bride, if I'm going to be honest. 2 years ago, 187 plate appearances, 204, 301, 247, 0.043 ISO, 1 home run. I'm laughing because this is their cleanup hitter today. I don't really understand that decision. Not that I'm super traditional about how to make a baseball lineup, but your cleanup hitter should probably have a little bit more power than that. I would have probably just put Kyle Stowers there. Or actually, no, just go Edwards, Stowers or Sanchez, Berger, Stowers or Sanchez. What's so hard about that? The fuck is Jonah Bride doing hitting cleanup today? He's got 11 home runs and 330 chances in AAA this season with a 187 ISO, 129 WRC plus. So I guess that's what they're clinging to. He had 13 last year in 323 AAA plate appearances, but last year that was as a 27-year-old, and this year it's as a 28-year-old. In no other minor league season did he hit more than the 10 that he hit in high A when he was 23. And if you're in high A at 23, 10 home runs is not all that impressive. This is not a hitter. That's a weird decision. But they're the Marlins. Marlins, if you're watching, I will manage the team next year, and I come cheap. Stowers is definitely interesting. Otto Lopez, 31-25, 4 positions on FanDuel, a lot more appealing over there. 3 home runs, 8 steals in 218 chances, a 256 on base, 57 WRC plus. Barely playable even in Marlins stacks. And really, you're just kind of mixing, matching your way across positions if you're doing it on FanDuel. Nick Gordon has 8 home runs, 5 steals in 265 chances, a 148 ISO, 6.3% barrel rate. This is one of the better options on this team, but it is not a good option compared to everything else in baseball. Forrest Wall and Nick Fortes rounding out the bottom of the lineup, and there's no quality whatsoever down there. Mix and match pieces if you're building a bunch of Marlins stacks for some reason. On the Braves side, Jorge Soler, top of the lineup. I love the opportunity for him to just see a ton of plate appearances at the top ahead of these hitters. If you get a little bit of on base, and he's got an okay 329 on base for a guy with a ton of thunder in his bat. 12 home runs and just a 177 ISO in an off year this year. 10.4% barrels and 39.6% hard hits. You can see where the home runs went. It's just in the quality of contact. Last year he hit 36 homers in 580 plate appearances at a 262 ISO. Major power threat at the top of the lineup going up against Max Meyer. Austin Riley for 51-35 has 14 home runs on the year. He's got an 11.45 in the home run model today. You've got 4 guys from this lineup in addition to the guys from the Orioles lineup and the other one with all the, 3 guys from that lineup above the magic number and then another 2 in the 9s. This one you got 4 guys above. Nobody in the 9s, but you get Sean Murphy in the 8s. Pretty appealing for home run upside. It's just a matter for the Braves, as usual, of what they can string together along with the home run upside. Do they actually get guys on base today? This team has scuffled in that department a lot more than they did in years past. That is a collective 299 on base percentage for this confirmed version of the Braves lineup. That is not good, guys. So these home runs are great to see. Maybe it makes them better as a short stack. Maybe it makes them better to pick off a one-off Austin Riley, a one-off Jorge Soler, one-off Marcell Ozuna, or Matt Olson. I do think they're very, very playable as a stack. Don't get me wrong. But I can see them being hampered in terms of we hit 2 home runs and we got to that 5 runs on that Vegas wanted, and that's all we gave you. We've had a lot of games like that from the Braves this year. So it's a stack, and it's one of the, again, 4 super appealing spots on this board. But out of the 4, despite being at the highest total, I am a little bit more concerned about the Braves than those other teams. The Orioles and the Royals are better run creators, better scorers than the Braves have been this season. Only the 3 hitters at the very top of the lineup are at above average WRC plus marks. Weighted runs created for the uninitiated. 100 being league average. Everything below 100 is below league average. So even Matty Olson, 99 WRC plus. I am willing to give Matt Olson the benefit of the doubt. He is one of my favorite first basemen in the league for his power upside. He absolutely mashed over the past couple of seasons. This year it's been really limited. The on base is terrible. The average is way down from last year. I don't really care about that as much, but he's lost a ton of barrel and a ton of hard hit, and he's only got 17 home runs in his 449 chances. Hopefully we see a big surge over the last 2 months. I think he hit one yesterday, so hopefully we get upside out of him. But it's been a long year from Matty Olson. 5,000, 3,200 though. It's all baked into the price. You're getting a nice discount at this point. Ozuna's been their best hitter all season. 301, 377, 584, 283 ISO. Creating runs 64% better than average as the key cog in a scuffling lineup. Orlando Arcia back in the lineup. Nacho Alvarez to the bench. 2,800, 2,600 is exceedingly cheap for who Orlando Arcia was last year. Guy who hit 264, 321, 420 at a 156 ISO, hit 17 home runs, was usually hitting like 8th and was a very effective option down there. Now hitting 5th despite struggling all season long over 385 plate appearances, 224, 263, 353, 9 home runs, a 129 ISO. It's been a lost year for Orlando Arcia. He's at least hitting the ball hard, but he's lost a little bit in barrels, striking out slightly more, not drawing the same walk rate, and the home run output is off the mark. So it's been tougher to trust, but at least he's very cheap. Again, we're dealing with this shortstop position. It's a key position today. I put Orlando Arcia a lot more in the Xavier Edwards bucket. He's at least a lot cheaper than Xavier Edwards. But But I put him a lot more in that kind of a bucket than into the Bobby Witt and Gunnar Henderson conversation. Eddie Rosario, 3,200, 2,700. You're just looking to pick off a cheap lefty home run. He's hit 10 of them this year. Wildly unreliable at 181, 223 with a 51 WRC+. Sean Murphy, ton of catcher power there for just 3,100. That's a nice buy if you're going to Braves. Really like that spot. Despite hitting 7th, I would have honestly hit him 5th. I don't really know why they made that decision. Murph, slashing just 217, 299, 380, 89 WRC+, 6 homers, but making pretty decent contact, 10.6% barrels. It's down from last year, but he's been in and out of the lineup and he's been injured, so we'll forgive that a little bit. I'll just buy the catcher upside for the cheap price. Jared Kelenic, a little bit more expensive, 12 home runs, 6 steals, lost his job as the leadoff hitter, 290 on base will do that to you, 236 average. He's an extreme roller coaster, but there is talent there, there's upside, there's counting stats there, 10% barrels and 44.8% hard hits for the season, fits right in with what he's done over the past couple years. Just doesn't look like he's ever going to fulfill that destiny as a superstar. And then Whit Merrifield's on this team this year, and we're happy for him. 201, 282, 296. Probably wishes he was still on the Phillies, if we're being honest. 3 home runs, 13 steals. He's been really bad this year. He's a guy who has filled counting stats over years past. Just kind of greatly diminished this season. Like last year, even last year, 592 chances, 272, 318, 382. Just a 93 WRC+, but 11 homers, 26 steals. Year before, pretty quality, just an 88 WRC+. But as a DFS player, he's been a lot better over time. This year has just been awful. Mix and match play for a low price at the absolute best, and you're probably just sticking him at second base. Charlie Morton, Braves bats, Marlins bats as a hedge, I guess. Actually, no, I think I like Max Meyer better than the Marlins bats, but that only exists on DraftKings. I don't think you play Max Meyer at 87 on FanDuel. For the money, or for the projection, rather, and for the matchup, I think, oddly, I'd rather just have Carson Fulmer against Colorado. Don't kill me, but I'd rather save the 2,000 for a matching projection. Better matchup. He's probably playable at 87, but again, you're not getting to the quality start. You've got a very limited shot at the win, and you're only getting 5 innings maybe. So he's really got to find a big strikeout total. The Braves strike out 23.5% of the time with this version of the lineup. So there is that upside. There's that potential that he goes out, pitches 5 innings, finds 8 to 10 Ks. It would be kind of an outlier start for him. That's why I don't think he's overly playable at 87 on FanDuel. It's not appealing to me. But I wouldn't put it this way. I wouldn't take him out of a crunch and sort kind of a process. I just wouldn't expect to get very much of him. Man, chat is busy today. I can't keep up. 57 people watching. We're down to 2 games left. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe for me. Appreciate that. 5:09. We got a ton of time left before the slate locks. Lot to talk through. Tripp's laughing at the Fulmer decision. Facing the Rockies, dude. We will always at least consider even bad pitchers. And he is a bad pitcher. It's just a cheap DFS angle. But can Fulmer give me 6 innings of reasonable enough quality? Given his 22.7% strikeout rate over 57 and a third, only 3 starts, a little bit of relief work in there. These aren't terrible numbers to throw at the Rockies. We'll get there. First, we got to deal with Sonny Gray and Shota Imanaga, the best pitching matchup of the day. 2 very high-end pitchers. Sonny at the very top of the pitching board, and I think believably so, facing a Cubs lineup, the projected version of which has a 22.2% strikeout rate. Let's see, we got the confirmed. Do we not yet have the Cubs lineup? Nope. So, assuming it's something along these lines, which probably will be, 22.2% strikeout rate. They're gettable enough, but it is a effective Cubs lineup in terms of run creation, at least through the top end. There's a lot of on-base skills through those top 5 hitters. Across those top 5, that's a 345 collective on base and a 124 collective WRC+. Bottom end of the lineup falls off a little bit, particularly given Dansby Swanson's struggles. That's a big hole for them, having that lack of production from Dansby, who has been super reliable for power, a little bit of speed, and being a quality on base and okay-ish average hitter over the past few seasons. He's still hitting the ball very hard. doing Dansby Swanson kind of things in that department. But everything else is struggling. The strikeouts are a little bit up. The walks are a little bit down. The average is down. The on-base is way down. The WRC plus is way down. The homer output is down. That's a big hole. Nico, this is where Dansby should be hitting, but Nico's there right now. We'll see if they switch those. Nico's having a rough-ish year, not really stealing as many bases, getting on at a 326 clip, just 93 WRC plus. I think he had an okay day yesterday, if I'm remembering correctly. He is cheap at second base and shortstop on the FanDuel slate. But, more mix and matchy. But this end of the Cubs lineup is definitely at least a little bit of a threat to the Sonny Gray quality. But Gray has been tremendous basically all season. 3.79 ERA, fine, whatever. 2.73 xFIP, a full run lower and a sparkling xFIP. 30.6% strikeout rate over his 111 and 2/3, a 6% walk rate. Last time out, he did give up 5 earned runs. He gave up 5 earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts, actually. A little problematic in recent form. 6 strikeouts in 2 of those. 10 strikeouts in a 5-run game against the Braves. 7 strikeouts in a 5-run game the last time out against the Nats. So a little bit of a bump in the road there. That's where the ERA got driven up a little bit. But we're still talking about some dominant strikeout potential against a team that is willing to give up some strikeout to him. Could the Cubs come out and hang another 5-run game on him? Sure. No doubt about it. I don't think anybody on this pitching board is entirely safe. But on talent, on strikeout upside, on just general quality, trust, track record, etc., Sonny's the top of the board. He's not my pitcher in my current placeholder lineup because I had to go super cheap to get to the batting combination that I wanted to get to, and you guys could probably guess who that pitcher is. We'll talk about him in a second. Already did just talk about him. But if I was spending at pitcher today, Sonny would be my choice. Imanaga on the other side, 9,600, 9,700 across sites, a 24.9% strikeout rate, a fantastic 3.8% walk rate, very strong 107 whip, 2.95 ERA, but a 3.79 xFIP underneath. It's basically the exact opposite of what Sonny Gray's done on the season. Imanaga's got a lot of quality. Last time out, just 3 Ks, 3 earned runs, 5 2/3 against Kansas City. To start before that, though, against the Diamondbacks, and that's a lefty facing the Diamondbacks, who are typically decent against lefties. Went 7, gave up 1 earned on 2 hits, struck out 10. The 1 earned came on a solo homer. 6 strikeout game, no runs on 6 hits at Baltimore. Pretty quality lineup there. He's booked 4 quality starts in his last 5 outings. Pretty decent. Only one of those was a win because Cubs, but it's a pretty decent run. Before that stretch, he had a 3-inning game that was a total disaster. Gave up 10 earned to the Mets on 11 hits, 3 home runs, 3 strikeouts. Not expecting that kind of a disaster today. Don't think he's in all that much danger from the Cards of putting up a decent total, but they could probably hang a few runs on him. See what he finds strikeout-wise. That's going to be the differentiator. His 24.9, nearly, call it 25%, call it 1-4, going up against a team that's more like 1-5 for what they do, 21.4% for this confirmed version of the Cards lineup. Imanaga, totally playable. I slightly prefer Sonny, but you could easily go the other way. And the Cards do a lot of similar things to what the Cubs do. They've got a little bit of power. They've got a little bit of on-base skills and run creation. Not as high-end, I don't think, right now. But there's definitely some quality there. Looking at the bats, I do think bats are playable enough on both sides. I probably lean, despite what I just said, I probably lean a little bit Cubs just because I like their bats a little bit better. If I had the choice where, if I could take the Cubs lineup but face Imanaga, that's what I would want to do. But I think the Cubs lineup is the higher end of these two teams, which is weird because they're the worst record-wise of these two teams. What's the, let me actually see, what's the active roster, active, and by WRC Plus, probably the easiest way to do that. Hell is it? This doesn't matter at all. If I can't find it, I'll go away from it. Why can't I find That's weird. Doing it by WAR, which is clunky. St. Louis better. 9.8 versus 7.5. I don't know where the hell WRC... Can you only get WRC plus in the splits? Not worth it. Whatever. DFS-wise today, I'm ranking the Cubs a little bit ahead of the Cardinals bats if we have to choose bats between this one, but we probably lean more pitching. Again, these two teams sitting at 4.01 and 4.07 implied runs, two of the lower marks on the board. Oh no, my premium trial expires in 2 days. That was a pop-up I needed right now. So the top of the Cards lineup, Mason Wynn, a playable enough shortstop, but again, we just slam right into that shortstop conversation. This game's got Mason Wynn and Dansby Swanson to offer. Neither of those guys is, especially with Dansby performing the way he is this year, neither of those guys is Gunnar Henderson. Neither of those guys is Bobby Witt. They're more comparable, of course, to Xavier Edwards and whoever the other shortstop in that game was, Orlando Arcia. Kind of falls into similar buckets. So you can see the stark disparity at the shortstop position today. Wynn is a playable guy in that group, though. 280, 328, 406, creating runs 8% better than average. Just not great for DFS in terms of counting stats. Only 7 home runs and 9 steals in a big chunk of plate appearances now. Not really a primo hitter. Just puts the ball in play a lot, hits for average, gets on base. He's fine for real-life baseball. As a leadoff hitter, that's ideal. The Cards would love to, or the Royals, I'm sure, would love to have him and teach him how to play, say, second base or something, third base. But even that 328 at the top of the Royals lineup will make a difference. So he's a capable enough leadoff hitter, but more a good real-life baseball player than a DFS asset right now. Wilson Contreras is a DFS asset, especially where you have to play catchers. 5,100, 12.7% barrels, 48% hard hits. He's a little bit cheaper than Adley Rutschman if you're just looking at one-off catcher with a high-price catcher. 13 home runs on the season, a 237 ISO, 153 WRC plus. Goldschmidt and Arenado back-to-back in the 3-4 spots, kind of going back to the old version of this card lineup. 4,600 and 4,000 apiece on DraftKings, 29 and 27 apiece on FanDuel. 16 home runs for Goldie, 11 on the season for Arenado, but Arenado holding down the better slash line. That said, not a good one. 263, 318, 385. That's not all that impressive. A 122 ISO. He's creating 1%, runs 1% better than average. Goldie's been 8 points worse than average. Tommy Pham back with this team. Somebody sent out a funny screenshot the other day. It was like a game highlights thing, and it was Tommy Pham, Matt Carpenter, Lance Lynn from the Cards, and obviously the comment was, what year is it? Because all those guys have been returned to the Cards. If only Albert Pujols was on the team. Pham is playable. He gives you good counting stat upside. 6 homers, 6 steals, and 303 chances this year is not his best output, but he did create runs above average on that terrible White Sox team, which is saying something. You can see a little bit of premium contact, but it's diminished over the last 2 years. Hard hits, most notably, down by about 8 points. But there's upside there, any given slate upside, and he is not expensive in the outfield. Brendan Donovan with multi-position eligibility, prefer him at second base on both sides, 38-28. Having an okay year. 330 on base and a 107 WRC plus is the most appealing thing. Capable of turning on the ball from time to time, but just 4.9% barrels, 38.3% hard hits. In no way is he a true power hitter, but he has hit for a little bit of power this year. Overall, now we're down to a 723 OPS, though. That was a little bit higher a few weeks ago. Lars Nootbaar is a good power and speed combo hitter, an ideal DFS asset. 108 WRC plus, hits from the left side against the lefty. A little bit diminished in the split. Actually, is he? I just flashed on that he's not. Hold on. Yeah, diminished in the split for power. The 98 WRC plus, he's not terrible in terms of that. He gets on base still a little bit. He strikes out way more against fellow lefties, and he does not hit for power against lefties. So it's not ideal to have Nootbaar against Imanaga. But I think he's a playable part given his upside. And then, if they blow up, hopefully get into the bullpen, get to a righty. Pedro Pajes and Michael Ciani just kind of mix and match pieces down the bottom of the lineup. Ciani's giving you 14 stolen bases, but mostly here to play defense. Pajes, backup catcher quality. Cubbies, if this is the lineup, and it probably will be against something kind of like this, Ian Happen, the leadoff spot, is definitely interesting. 342 on base out of him, 122 WRC plus, 17 homers, making great contact with 12% barrels and 44.4% hard hits. Does strike out a decent amount, and so do all of the top three, but there's a lot of upside for power and contact and some on-base skills and run creation through that stretch. So that's the danger zone for Sonny Gray, but he's more than capable of exploiting those 25% and above strikeout rates up there. Michael Busch continues to be very cheap at first base on DraftKings despite some good contact, 13 home runs and 382 chances, a 190 ISO, and 25% better than average run creation so far. On FanDuel, he still fits in at second base among his three positions, and he only costs $2,800. That is an absolutely ideal inclusion in a Cubs stack. You can better believe if I'm stacking Cubs, Michael Busch is going to be a strong consideration at second base on a weak slate for second baseman. Seiya Suzuki at 47, 33, 15 homers, 10 steals, a 212 ISO. Absolutely mashing when he makes contact, making decent contact. 27.5% strikeout rate is up for him from the season. The walks are down a little bit. There's frequent enough contact in there, and he gets on base at a 343 clip. Creating runs 31% better than average, having a dynamite year, and he's honestly not that expensive. 55, 3,000 for Cody Bellinger in a little bit of a down season. He's hitting for a 277 average. He's getting on base at a 337 clip, and he's created runs 13% better than average. He's got 10 home runs on the board now, a 146 ISO, so maybe we catch the second half power surge. But the power was down a little bit. The premium contact is never great for him. He's not striking out. Nothing went haywire with what we're looking for from Cody Bellinger. We just didn't get the big spike of power from him that we're hoping for this year, but perfectly fine to play and a quality lefty bat to throw at Sonny Gray. Isaac Paredes, 4,500, 3,100, 16 home runs on the season, hit 31 last year, 191 ISO. Despite limited contact, does manage to find power output. We'll see how much of that he was benefiting from the ballpark in Tampa Bay, in that weird spot in the ballpark where he was hitting his home runs to pretty frequently. Depends on what happens with that as an aspect of his power output, but I do think there's a reasonable enough bat there, and he's not expensive, 45-31, happy enough to get to him. Nico, mix and match part, given that 326 on base and 17 steals, that's what keeps him afloat, but he was running more last year, he was getting on base more frequently last year. Like I said, Dansby a little bit problematic in a really off season. Shortstop, again, filling that conversation, 35-26 is very cheap for his previous seasons of output, and for a guy making 9.3% barrels and 44.4% hard hit kind of contact this year, but nothing else has come together for him despite the good contact. And then Crow Armstrong's here to play defense, steal the occasional base. Miguel Amaya is a very limited catcher option. He has hit 3 home runs in 229 chances, but just a .083 ISO, 65 WRC+. Sonny Gray, Imanaga, Cubs bats, Cards bats. I think all four sides are a little bit playable, but the pitchers are a pretty big step up above the bats in this one. And now you guys can all make fun of me while I talk about the option to play Carson Fulmer, which I'm happy to do for you. Joker, stop whatever you're doing. Weird noises coming from the other room again. All right, so Carson Fulmer, again, a lot of work in relief. 57 and a third, but only 3 starts. Those were his 3 most recent outings, stretching him back out to be a starter. He made 8 starts back in 2018, had an 8.07 ERA and a 6.56 xFIP in the show as a 24-year-old. 20 outings mostly in relief in 2019. 20 outings all in relief through 25 and 2/3 back in 2021 for Cincinnati. 6.66 ERA with a 4.96 xFIP. 20.7% strikeout rate in that sample. 23.9% strikeout rate in 2020. He threw 10 and a third in 10 games in that 60-game season. There's not a lot to look at in the track record. Not a lot to look at in the game log. Come on, Fangraphs, work with me here. I should have just pulled this. There we go. We want to look at some minor league numbers in along the way here. where's our samples of innings? It's such a long track record at this point, and there's innings all over the place between relief and starts and minors, and it's a mess. 56 2/3 in AAA for the Dodgers. So he played for both LA teams. For the Dodgers in 2022, he had a 2.86 ERA with a 4.54 FIP, 25.6% strikeout rate, but an aggressive 14.5% walk rate. Look, again, this is not a good pitcher. Does have decent stuff in terms of traditional scouting, but you can see Stuff Plus has him, 3.5 points below average, similar to Ryan Feltner. Why is this mouse just all over the place? Forget it. So it's just a cost-based play? It's just a little bit of hope and strikeout upside from a guy who's found a 22.7% strikeout rate, again, some of which has come at maximum effort in relief innings. But in those 3 starts that he's made, jumping back to that's Sonny Gray. Boy, I wish it was those Sonny Gray starts. 5 2/3 in his most recent outing. That was against the Athletics. He gave up 3 earned runs on just 2 hits. 3 strikeouts, 3 walks, gave up a homer. 3 strikeouts, 2 walks, gave up a homer. 3 earned runs on 5 hits over 4 2/3 at Oakland against the same Oakland squad in his second start. And then in the first full start, 4 2/3, 7 strikeouts against the Mariners. No earned runs, no hits, 1 walk. If you get that game with 1 extra inning on top of it, you have paid the bills at these prices. And the Rockies, I'm going to tell you right now, comparable enough opponent to that Mariners team. Also comparable to those Oakland teams that he gave up 3 earned runs and only struck out 3 against. So obviously there's a pretty big downside. In 3 innings of bulk relief, he faced 14 Rangers hitters, gave up 2 earned runs on 4 hits, but struck out 5. 1 inning relief appearance, 2 inning relief appearance. 2 innings of relief against the Athletics again. Struck out 3 in that one as well. He really likes striking out just 3 A's. Going all the way back to April, he had a 3 1/3 inning start against the Twins. He went, not start, but bulk relief appearance. He gave up 4 earned, struck out just 2. Struck out 5, though, in 4 innings of bulk relief against the Red Sox at Fenway. Again, this is all the way back in April, but it happened. Faced 16 hitters, gave up 2 hits, no runs, walked 3. You get a lot of walks. You get a very high danger spot in terms of putting guys on base. He's got a 1.20 whip in his limited innings. 4.59 xFIP is obviously a lot worse than a 3.77 ERA, and it's not all that playable. This is a little bit of surface appeal, but this is the real number, and it's probably honestly even worse than that. He's given up a fair amount of premium contact on a fly ball trajectory. 9.7% barrels, 40% hard hits, 89.5 degree average launch. It's resulted in just a 2.89% home run rate in his max effort innings, but he's given up some home runs in in 2 of his 3 full starts. So, again, there's a lot of bad in there with the potential. All I really need at 6,700 and 7,300 is 5 or 6 innings, handful of strikeouts. I don't really care if you give up three runs on a home run. I care greatly if you give up that 4th run. If you're giving me 6. If you're not giving me 6, then I don't really care about the 4th run. Just find me some strikeout upside. But he is the key to unlocking some pretty high-end stack combinations. And the other cheap pitcher on the slate, the other guy that's getting any kind of popularity in that role, is this guy on the other side. So even if you choose to go away from Carson Fulmer and say that he sucks and he's not good, try it out for the season. That sucks. Even if you're choosing to go away from Carson Fulmer, your other option is the other terrible pitcher on the other side of this same game. And his numbers, he's made more full starts. He's given us more complete innings, but he's got a 4.99 ERA. 4.10 xFIP is a lot better. 10.8% swinging strike rate, but a 26.5% CSW, a 1.41 whip, despite a 7.6% walk rate. You could argue maybe a little bit of bad luck in there for Ryan Feltner, but I think we know full well that this is not a high-end pitcher either. On DraftKings for 6,000 versus the 7,300, I can understand why Feltner would be the more highly owned option than Fulmer. But it's the opposite on FanDuel, 67 versus 75. So you're just making the price-based decision. But on DraftKings, where Feltner is getting more ownership, it's close. It's not dramatically offset, but Feltner's the more popular of the two. You can consider the light spend up for Fulmer and get away from some of that popularity. I don't know that it's enough to matter. You probably just ride with whichever one's cheaper on your site of choice. But that's the kind of play we're talking about. We are not talking about Carson Fulmer being a good pitcher. We're not talking about Ryan Feltner being a good pitcher. It just works for the price. This is very likely to be a slate where we're winning with bats anyway. Michael Knack says, I can strike out the Mariners, or he can strike out the Mariners. Yes, you could also probably strike out the Rockies. 25.4% strikeout rate for that confirmed Rockies lineup. KC24 says, go Halos. Jeremy Savage, everything I won yesterday was the opposite of what he had. Michael Knack, if he plays any Cardinal tonight, it's Tommy Pham. DB got a Gunnar Henderson auto rookie card. Nice. Solid, dude. No, DB, you don't want to look at WAR. WAR's a flawed stat, and it's different from site to site depending on how they compute it. I just defaulted to that because it was the only thing on that board when I was trying to look for the WRC plus numbers. So talking about the bats in this one, since we've got two terrible pitchers, you can obviously go to the bats on either side. The Angels are drawing a little bit higher of an implied total. That said, I kind of like the pieces on the Rockies side a little bit better. Charlie Blackmon's okay at the top of the Rocks lineup, still gets on at a 332 clip, but he's 6 points below average for run creation. He's cheap. He's a lefty bat to throw at Carson Fulmer. There's nothing wrong with playing shares of Charlie today. If they go off, he could definitely be involved. Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle have been their two best players on the season. Apologies to Ryan McMahon, who started out the year as their best player, but they've surpassed him by now. Tovar at 290, 314, 491, a very solid 201 ISO with 18 homers, and Brenton Doyle 272, 334, 479 with a 206 ISO and a 111 WRC plus, 18 homers for him and 21 stolen bases. Both of those guys are having good years. That is not a bad 2-3 option. Ryan McMahon with 16 homers at 180 ISO, but has dramatically cooled off. Still a lot of quality from the left side. We're just back to normal Ryan McMahon output at this point. Definitely playable. Definitely a reason to consider the Rockies if you're not rostering Carson Fulmer. Brendan Rodgers, 32-28. 7 home runs out of him on the season. A lot of hard hits, 44.5% hard hits. Fairly low walk, but slightly tick above average at 22.3% strikeouts. 79 WRC plus. Needs to get more consistent, but the hard hits are nice to see. Getting Brendan Rodgers basically every day in this lineup at a fair price at second base isn't a bad option when you stack the Rockies. Michael Talia, 18 home runs and 240 plate appearances. Everything else is very limited. 32.5% strikeouts, just a 271 on base and 92 WRC plus. It's just a power play. 8.39 to lead the team today in the home run model, but that's not a killer home run mark compared to where he is in a lot of games. Jake Cave, Jacob Stalling, Sam Hilliard at the bottom of the lineup. Between the three, I'm most interested in Sam Hilliard. 3 home runs and 3 steals in 56 plate appearances this year. You get little counting stat output out of him when he finds his way into lineups for whatever team he's on over the last few seasons. 14.3% barrels and 48.6% hard hits in his limited sample this year. But what's interesting about him is you can see that's consistent across the past few seasons. When he's gotten his limited chances, he has hit the ball very effectively. The output comes and goes. The results come and go. Talking about 236, 295, 431 with 3 homers and 4 steals in 78 chances last year. 200 plate appearances, the largest sample the year before. 184, 282, 64, 2 homers, 5 steals. Wasn't great that year despite making good contact. So it's a very mixed bag. But compared to Jacob Stallings and Jake Cave, I'd rather have Sam. Give me Sam over the 2 Jakes. Give me Chinatown over the 2 Jakes as well. ISO is very important, Greg. I basically talk about the things that I care about, right? So if I talk about it on this show, figure that I care about it and I think it's important. Yeah, OPS is somewhat indicative, for sure. It's just a combination of these two. So that's on the board right there. You just got to do the math in your head real quick. But OPS is just kind of it's a non-predictive summary stat where it's just telling you, all right, the things that we care about are how hard slug is reflective of extra base hits. So it's not directly tied to how hard you hit the ball and how well you're striking the ball and how frequently. It's more tied to the results. And it's a combination of what are my results in terms of power and extra base hits, and what are my results in terms of on-base percentage. So that's where OPS comes into play. Something like WOBA is a good one for a little bit. X-WOBA is more predictive in terms of telling you the weighted on-base average that a guy should have. And that should tell you a little bit more, and it should inform a little bit about how frequently a guy should be getting on base and what his WRC plus number, his run contribution, should look like. I like ISO because it is another backward-looking, results-oriented stat, but it's very easy to work with in terms of just telling you what a guy's power output has been. A 200 ISO is considered, is going to elevate you into like starish tier kind of level. And, these two guys aren't necessarily what I would call stars, and a 286 ISO out of a guy like Talia, you can get a 200 plus ISO while being a flawed hitter in a lot of ways if you just hit for an absolute ton of power when you hit. That's why I like including the numbers that actually reveal how they're striking the ball, because there can be some deceptive numbers in terms of the results-based stuff. And then we work with some of the predictive, some of the percentages, and all of that is informed on the back end that actually fuels the projections and the home run model. Hopefully that helps a little bit. If you're looking for great definitions, Fangraphs has a phenomenal glossary page. I just dropped the link into the chat. Pull that up. You can find all sorts of definitions and just really interesting examples. They give you the full formula and they tell you what the ranges are. So it's like, all right, I want to use this stat. I want to implement it, but I don't know how it works. I don't know what's a good WRC plus, let's say, what's a bad WRC plus. And that's why that's another good stat, especially for just doing this, for talking about players, because it's another summary stat. It's weighted runs created plus. It normalizes everything across the league, and it just tells you basically essentially how many runs a guy is creating. And it works on a 100 scale. So 100 is exactly league average. If you're above that, you're above average. If you're below that, you're below average. And it's exactly, just do the math out of 100, that percentage point. So like the 107 WRC plus for Ezekiel Tovar, he's 7% better than average for creating runs this season. So it's just a very easy stat to work with, but they give you those ranges. So it's like, they'll tell you, all right, an 80 WRC plus is bad. A 100 is league average. A 120 is great, and so on and so forth. Same thing with ISO. Thank you, DB. I appreciate that. You guys are my favorite DFS audience. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe for, I almost said your old pal. I don't want to steal the MX line. Your friend, your buddy, your favorite DFS streamer, whatever you want to call me. Angel side of things, Nolan Chaniel, been on pretty much of a tear, really corrected those numbers pretty quickly. 254, 346, 382 at this point. Just a 128 ISO, but creating runs 7% better than average, kind of fulfilling his destiny now as their leadoff hitter. He's been effective. He only cost 36.28. If you're considering Angel stacks, there's worse ways to get it started. Michael Stefanich climbing the lineup, 2,400 on DK, 2,000 at second base on FanDuel. That spot in the lineup makes him a little bit interesting. If you're considering Angels as a value play already, getting him at the dead min 2,400 and being able to put him at second base, usually you get him in the 9 spot. So just climbing the lineup. We haven't gotten anything out of him over 38 plate appearances yet, but just being a very effective free square is worth considering at a position that almost demands a free square today. Taylor Ward, 4,300, 2,900 across sites. Been stuck where he is at 16 home runs for a minute, 170 ISO. The numbers are declining around him. As I said yesterday, hopefully we get a little bit of a bounce, the dead cat bounce as they call it, from Taylor Ward at this point, now that he knows he's not getting traded. Willie Calhoun, 33-25, 4 home runs, pretty limited slash line at 255, 322, 389, a 135 ISO, kind of showing the seams around the edges for why he never actually stuck as a major leaguer, despite a very strong prospect pedigree. Logan O'Hoppe, 4,100, 2,800, 15 home runs. Nothing wrong with the output for power from him. 185 ISO, 124 WRC plus. One of the 3 guys on this squad creating runs a bit better than average. Mickey Moniak, 3,000, 2,600, way below average at a 59 WRC plus. Zach Neto having a good year. 13 home runs, 19 stolen bases, a 108 WRC plus, 174 ISO. Not bad for an infielder. It's just another guy who just falls into the seams of that. Said seams twice in the last minute and a half. Falls through the cracks of that shortstop conversation where you are very much not getting one of the high-end shortstops on this slate. It probably goes Gunnar and Bobby, tied at the top, obviously, and super expensive. Then Tovar, and then a gap to the Netos and everybody else. Neto is probably top of the heap, though, among the Neto and everybody else crowd. Getting better numbers out of him and probably would rather have him than Orlando Arcia, but I'd rather have Orlando Arcia's stack. So it depends on how it fits. What are you stacking the Braves with if you do that? Do you need Orlando Arcia there? But Neto's numbers haven't been bad this year. Brendan Drury and Joe Adell at the bottom of the lineup, just two really scuffling hitters. Both sub-Mendoza, both way below 300 on base. Very limited in terms of WRC+. Drury's just been lost all year. 1 home run on the season. He had great power output over the last 2 seasons. Not so much this year. And then Joe Adell hit most of those 16 home runs, stole most of those bases in the first 100 plate appearances, and has been pretty bad since then. Was a kid who's, again, supposed to have tons and tons of power and shows the power and makes good contact, but the reliability is dramatically limited. Makes for a decent tournament option. He's very cheap for the explosive days that he can have, but that's all he is. Gunner's the GOAT. DB loves Gunner. I do not dislike it. Michael Knack says stats don't matter. It's feel it in your plums. I will strongly disagree, my friend. Look, I like having the feeling for something feeling good too. But it's about math and statistics. That is what it is. Take the truth rather than the feel every time. Mama says I don't like the victory lap, but Trout being out for the season just made my day. Sorry, not sorry. I mean, Mama, that doesn't improve your point that he's overrated. Nobody argues that he's injury prone. He's always been injury prone. That's the reason he is. I mean, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer anyway. But that's the reason he's not putting up, keeping up with the Mickey Mantle pace that he was on earlier in his career. He's still had a very, very good career. It's a shame that he's injury prone. I don't think you should be happy about it. But it does not improve your point that he's overrated. You're wrong. You're just wrong, buddy. And you shouldn't be happy that he got hurt. I think honestly, buddy, that's a kind of a shitty way to look at it. Just to do this one more time, Mike Trout for his career, over 6,600 plate appearances, has a 299, 410, 581 slash line, has created runs 69% better than average for his career, over 1,500 games. He's still only 32, by the way. He has 378 home runs. Give me 4 healthy seasons from 32 to 36, and we probably still get to 500 home runs for the career. He's just hurt. He's just hurt all the damn time, and it's an absolute tragedy. As a baseball fan, you should be sad that he gets hurt when he's healthy. In 2022, he managed to make 499 plate appearances. Didn't even make 500 plate appearances. Still hit 40 home runs. 283, 369, 630. That was his last monster year. That was 2 years ago. It's not exactly, forever ago. Literally the best player of his generation, or I don't even want to say or one of. He's the best player of his generation. Very much like Mickey, and especially Mickey toward the end, and Trout as he's aging into his 30s, gets hurt a lot. Unfortunately, it diminishes where they would have landed. Guy like Ted Williams, diminished by going to fight 2 wars. You got to take some of those things into account. Would you say that Ted Williams is overrated because he missed like 6 years of his career by going off to war, or would you say that he's actually underrated despite being considered the best hitter of all time? So missed time does not equate to overrated. Anyway, let's summarize this instead of chewing Mamba out for his bad take. Still love you, Mamba. Sonny Gray, top of your pitching board, 10,000, 9,800 across sites. Totally worth paying for. A little bit of a threat for sure, but everybody on this board is threatened. Has not been great in his most recent 4 starts, but I have a long, long track record with Sonny Gray. And throughout that track record, there have always been blips. There have always been a couple bad starts in a row where the bad Sonny comes through and it doesn't really work out. He's easily your best strikeout pitcher on this slate in terms of current year results and honestly ongoing results. Seth Lugo overperforming on the season, so I'd rather take a Sonny Gray that's more, just kind of pitching like who he is than an overperforming Seth Lugo. That said, Lugo's got the better of the 2 matchups, and he's probably got the best matchup among the high-end, the 4 high-end pitchers facing the Tigers. Definitely an interesting spot, 10-3, 9,400. He's going to be the most popular pitcher, or one of the most popular pitchers. Actually, Charlie's the most popular pitcher at the diminished price. I think Lugo was second. Imanaga against a gettable cards lineup for a bit of a discount here, less so here, just kind of in the mix on DraftKings, has some appeal if you need the savings in price. I prefer Lugo, I prefer Gray, but if I need the $300 from Gray, if I need the $600 from Lugo, I'll take that spot. I would probably be more inclined, though, if I was trying to save, to go to Charlie against Miami and just eat the popularity. 8,800 is a pretty good price. It accounts for any of the 3 or 4 runs they'll probably score against. And it's one of the better matchups for him. So, again, when you see like a 3 or 4 run XFIP, know that some of that comes by facing some very good teams. When he faces a team like the Marlins, you can expect him to beat that number. We're hoping for that from Carson Fulmer against one of the more targetable teams in baseball. The Rockies on the road against a righty is just kind of what we're clinging to. It's just a price-based play. Again, number 1 and number 2 most popular value plays of the day. And I think you could just go by whichever one's cheaper on your side of choice. For me, that's Carson Fulmer on FanDuel. And despite what this looks like, given that these guys are in red and this guy's in the middle of the board and in yellow, for one, very short slate. Noteworthy gap between him and these guys. There's a 7-point gap from Charlie Morton down. There's only a 3-point gap between Ryan Feltner and Carson Fulmer. Same thing over here. So there's not much daylight between any of these guys. These guys clearly offset at the top of the board, regardless of what the conditional formatting might look like. 87 from Max Meyer on FanDuel is a little bit uncomfortable. I don't think you're getting the 6th inning. You just have a little bit of strikeout potential across the 5 that we'll probably get. Limited opportunity to win the game. Maybe an interesting way to stack that if you're going to Marlins hedge stacks or Marlins contrarian angle against Charlie Morton in a handful of lineups. Maybe those are the ones where you consider your Max Meyer shares, because that feeds your win bonus upside from Max Meyer, right? If the Marlins go off alongside him, he has a decent 5-inning day. Now maybe we're getting that win. So that's maybe how I would handle Max Meyer, but it's primarily on DraftKings at 75. Don't think I really roll the dice with him that many times on FanDuel, even with that angle toward the win. And again, if you do that, you know that you're stacking him up with a bad offense against a pretty good veteran pitcher. Ben Lively against the Orioles, pretty rough on the board, but 8,000 is just kind of a misfit price for the rest of this slate. If he was cheap, if he was Cater Montero pricing or Trevor Rogers pricing, he'd be a little bit more in consideration. I do think you can maybe get to him a little bit more in the mix on DraftKings just because you got to shuffle up the 2 pitcher spots, but definitely for one lineup, not an appealing pitcher at all. Cater Montero, very much the same thing. 55 for him on DraftKings. If you're building a bunch of lineups, you could throw that dart a few times. But KC, super low strikeout, one of the highest totals on the board, and a team we really want to get to, and they're showing a bunch of power against them. Trevor Rogers, very much the same thing against Cleveland. They're low strikeout. They're showing a bunch of quality against him. He does have talent. They acquired him for a reason. I think they they can fix him, get him back to that high 20 strikeout rate and the quality pitcher he was a couple seasons ago. But again, I do not think that that's going to happen in his first outing and against the Cleveland Guardians. So rough spot there. Ryan Feltner, just a value play. Pick your poison value-wise. It's this guy or it's that guy. Depends on where you play pretty much. But again, I would roll some Carson Fulmer on DK at that price. Not that bad. That's it. And one more time, just for the doubters out there, there's no reason to be a doubter because I'm saying that these Carson Fulmer and Ryan Feltner plays are not good. These are not good pitchers. They're DFS tournament plays. It's really all they are. They are very unlikely to work out. I don't know why I zoomed back in on my face. I guess I was going to do a rant there, but I forgot I didn't show the home run board yet. So let me do that. But make those plays with the understanding that we're not making them because these are good pitchers. We're not making them because they're extremely likely to succeed. The likelihood is that they fail. The reason to make them is because of what they buy you and the angles they buy you into a short slate. And even with some popularity on them, they help you create new roads to stacks, right? You can get onto differentiated ownership and combination paths. And more than anyone's raw ownership, any individual ownership, or even any team stack ownership, the combination ownership is the key. Couple of Orioles at the top of the board, Gunnar and Santander. Primo bats today. Adley not too far behind in the 4 spot. Marcell Ozuna intervening there. You've got a ton of power for the Braves. I mean, it's very straightforward today, right? It's those teams that I said off the top of the show. The Orioles, the Braves, and the Royals are all showing a ton of power. And then the Guardians a little bit less in terms of the home run output, but extreme upside for run scoring in their spot. Some mix of Orioles, Royals, Braves, and Guardians is extremely likely to win this slate. Just depends on how you can get there. So you have to consider how those teams fit together. What else do they fit with? You can go cheap in your secondary stack. Get some Angels maybe in that spot. Consider some Rockies maybe. The middle teams are the ones that are a little less likely, I think, to connect. The Cubs and the Cards. They're the ones that are showing us a little bit less. They're facing two pretty good pitchers. Marlins are kind of obviously low end. Same thing with the Tigers. It's these guys where I think you can maybe get bogged down a little bit, wander off into the swamp, and your feet are stuck, and you're trying to get out of the mud, but you're just stuck in place and you starve to death. I think it's that kind of a journey. That's the kind of path you take with those teams. So you got to find that correct path through the deep, dark woods, and I think you want to be doing that primarily Orioles, Guardians, Royals, Braves. Again, that is where everybody's going to be going, but there are enough soft spots ownership-wise across all of those lineups that you can easily put together very differentiated combinations, and then you're working with whatever pitching you can get to. Michael Nack says, Matty Olson goes yard. I like that call. No issues there. Where was he on the board? Right here. Solid 10-5. And yeah, again, for the Braves, you got 4 guys above the magic number, right? And then 3 Orioles right there, and then a 4th Oriole right there. So 4 Braves, 4 Orioles above the magic number for home run upside, and then another 2 Orioles lurking right there. This is not counting for, I'm not paying attention to who's in the lineups. I think all these guys are. Yeah, they are. So, I mean, that is an absolute metric fuck ton of power showing for these teams. Murph, even Kelnick down there. We're drawing down to 6.8 now. We're far off the magic number at that point, but still well above halfway, and just feeds the upside to deepen the stack. And then a Michael Talia lurking here from Colorado. Little outlier. If you need an outlier, Talia's your guy. Didn't come through for us yesterday. Hunter Renfroe, by the way, again, since I landed on him there, has effectively turned things around a little bit, just enough to be interesting given all the home runs he's hit in his career. That's not a terrible mark. He's not expensive. And on a team that will be popular, it's an easy way to differentiate. All right, gang. I think that's about it. I appreciate you, Mamba. Hopefully you know that the trout conversation all in good fun, obviously. I don't know how Terry does it every day. He helps people every day for free, and people only care about how much shit he gets wrong, not all the things he got right. I don't think that's true, actually. Nobody really gives me all that much shit. I think everybody's good and understands. But I appreciate that either way, buddy. What did I didn't even look. Let me make sure I got this in. Did we get any new confirmed lineups so we can talk about real quick while I look this up at the end of the show? Let me see here. Rockies. Did we have the Rockies? I don't think we did. Oh, we did. Damn. I was hoping I could talk about something just while I pull something up here, though, real quick. What did oh, wow. I didn't even notice that yesterday. I got sidetracked. I was gaming last night and got sidetracked away from the end of the slate. But, yeah, hopefully that worked out. XX Hustle mentions. 6K Freeland was nice yesterday. Yeah. Put up a pretty solid 46 FanDuel points. 6 strikeouts, just 1 earned run, 6 hitter, over 7 innings. That was that upside start we were chasing when we were talking about with Kyle Freeland yesterday. Same kind of thing we're chasing with Feltner and Fulmer today. So, yeah, good point there, XX Hustle. I appreciate it. And see, Mama, there's somebody talking about something that I got right yesterday. Didn't play it, of course, myself, but hopefully it worked out for somebody. 40-year-old Chalk Morton. No thanks, says XX Hustle. Yeah, look, it's an uncomfortable Morton, and he's been that way, for the last year plus. But again, you are going to get him against one of the more gettable squads, so you get worried about that a little bit more if it's, say, Charlie Morton against the Royals or even against like the Cards or whatever. But against the Marlins, it's a little bit less of a consideration. But that does feed the potential that maybe the Marlins are an angle into the cheap bats today. With that in mind, guys, you guys absolutely rock. We didn't quite make it to 2 hours for 5 games again today, but coming up on 6 o'clock, we got about 40 minutes till our early lock tonight, so let me go get everything updated. We'll keep an eye on lineups and news and anything like that. Hit the like button one last time, or don't do it again if you did it already, but if you haven't yet, hit the like button. Subscribe if you've never done that. At rotoscouts Twitter handle if you never did that. Tell a friend. If you got friends that like to play DFS, let them know. We need some, not that we need new blood, but, continuing to build is nice. What do we have subscribers-wise? How many subscribers do I have? Like 600 and change? Can we make like a 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year kind of a goal? I think that seems fair. The end of the calendar year. We're at 688. We could do that. Let's make that happen, gang. 1,000 subscribers by New Year's Day. If we fall short, we fall short. It's not like a hard and fast goal, but it would be cool to see. I think once you hit that 1,000 threshold and like kind of unlocks some YouTube stuff, I think it also like, obviously organically spreads word a little bit more. I love that people are just joining the show at the end here, but enjoy catching up on 2x speed. Hopefully you're definitely playing the show at 2x speed at this point. You got about 40 minutes to go through, so maybe a little bit faster. Michael Knack, yeah, I think this has been the most engaged chat we've had, at least in a while. Stream NFL and we hit 1K easy. XX, we were streaming NFL. We did NFL marathon shows for each week last year. I'm going to hopefully break it up a little bit better this year. Last year we were doing like 4-hour shows once a week. This year, hopefully, it'll be a little bit different. But yeah, we did streams last year for every NFL slate. Obviously, we were smaller at that point. We're gradually growing and growing, but we'll be back for NFL for sure this year. And yeah, hopefully, we grow through that. Bowser or Mountcastle is the last man in. Definitely Bowser, the bad guy from the Mario video games. He's going to kidnap the princess tonight and fly off with her. Yeah, I know Kowser. Yeah, I would go Kowser in that spot, Trav. Unless position or price, I think Mountcastle might be a little bit cheaper, and he's probably going to be lower owned. But in a vacuum, I would take the leadoff hitter, I would take the lefty, and I would take the upside for power that Kowser offers. Mountcastle's good. I like Mountcastle a lot. Don't get me wrong. If ownership matters, then it's probably Mountcastle. Let's see. This is the last thing we're going to check. Yeah, if ownership's a factor at all, Kowser's going to be pretty dramatically the most popular player on that team by 8 to 10 points. I don't care. Right? Again, I don't really care about any individual ownership, and it's not like he's like 50% owned. He's firmly into the double digits. We'll see where it actually lands. Mountcastle is in the low-mid single digits. So if you need a differentiation point, you're not making a mistake by choosing Ryan Mountcastle there. You probably lose, quarter of a plate appearance projected or whatever, but it hardly matters. There's a lot of upside in Mountcastle as well. You're sacrificing a little bit in terms of the home run model. 10.11 from a leadoff hitter to 9.44 from a 6-hitter. Not a big difference. 13 home runs on the season and 411 from Mountcastle from the right side. 16 in 347 chances from Kowser from the left side. But Mountcastle gives you a little bit more in terms of average and on base. Well, not on base, but I lost track of which line was which. A little bit better average, a little bit lower on base. Similar run creation marks. Very similar hitters. Just lefty-righty and a better spot for Colton Kowser in the leadoff position. All right, for real this time. Let me end the show and get out of here and get everything updated. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Come on back tomorrow for more on what will be a much bigger slate. See ya.